Welcome. It's Programming Simplified. We're doing a new format today. I've got Peter with me today. We're going over nutrition stuff. So, Peter and I have known each other kind of through Instagram. I think we've been communicating together on Instagram for maybe about a year now, but
Yeah.
we actually competed against one another in the Proven 3.0 competition a long time ago, back in
Yeah.
2023, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think you won that year.
Well, actually, no, I lost on a tiebreaker to JT. We were both tied in points after the last event, and he got the tiebreaker because he had we did not have an event win the whole weekend. We had a bunch of second place finishes, and he had
Hmm.
one more than I did, and he won that year. So
Dang.
still a good story to tell.
I remember I have a vivid memory of you finishing the sandbag double under workout and like going into full cramps and like hardly being able to walk off the field.
That was the first time I've ever gotten carried off a floor because I could not walk. Like I had to beat JT on both parts and someone had to come in at least one person come in between us. So I
Hmm.
I did beat him in both parts, but no one came in between us. And I was absolutely just sending it the whole time. It was just full send. And it was a two-part workout. Towards the end, back half of the second part, both my quads are just cramping, and I'm like doing the double unders with a drag rope, and I'm just like, please just don't seize up right now. As soon as I crossed that line, I laid on the ground and just, I think I started crying, and I was like, just telling the judge, like, help. That was
Yeah.
so bad. It was so bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, good times.
Right. So I guess I mean, it's not like I've got a ton of people watching the show yet, but
Yet.
go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more. Tell everyone kind of what you do and
Yeah.
what you've got going on, and then we'll kind of dive into the nutrition stuff.
Sounds good. Yeah, I own Trident Athletics. It's my personal training and nutrition business. I coach a lot of athletes in person. I coach a lot of athletes online, and then also I have nutrition coaching as my other half of what I do. And I got into CrossFit 2018, and through sports and coaching, it just became my full time career. I've coached in affiliates, I've coached in sports facilities. I currently also coach at the collegiate level. I do the strength and conditioning for women's volleyball and basketball. So, like, I turned this coaching thing into a full time gig, and yeah, I absolutely love it. Currently, I'm a level 3 CrossFit coach and just enrolled in the new level 4, so I'm excited to see how that's gonna go. And yeah, love sports, love CrossFit, love training myself as well, and just geek out on a lot of things, and especially in the DMs with Spencer, we talk about fitness all the time.
I know today we're going to go over nutrition, but I'd love to have you back on in the future and talk about that, how you got into the kind of more sports
Yeah,
specific stuff with the volleyball and the basketball teams, and pick your brain a little bit more about what that looks like. I think that there's um, a lot of opportunity for good CrossFit coaches. CrossFit coaches have to be so good at understanding kind of a lot of different disciplines within sports performance, and they're pretty like they're kind of like a Swiss Army knife of uh, creating strength and conditioning programs for collegiate sports, and can be a very versatile coach in that regard. And so I'm interested to learn more about that, maybe in future episodes. But
yeah, sounds good.
um, today we're going to go over nutrition. Uh, Peter's been posting a lot of like really great content on Instagram. I recently have gotten kind of into nutrition. We did a nutrition challenge at my gym in my affiliate. And so we've done a lot of kind of, um, I've been leading a lot of sort of like education forward stuff related to nutrition. And both of us kind of were talking about podcast stuff, and I was like, hey, why don't we just like get on a call and talk about it and kind of see where it goes. So, um, the first thing that we were going to go over, that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about is
Yeah.
to track or not to track, and how that looks, because this seems to be a very hot topic. I think that it's probably one of the most contentious things related to nutrition, apart from like the tribalism of keto versus vegan versus
Yep.
carnivore versus carb, no carb, all that BS that we can talk about a little bit later in the episode. But a lot of times I would say that folks are resistant to tracking, because they either have a negative association with the scale, or it's challenging. They don't know how to go about it. And so I know that there are strategies to get really successful outcomes with nutrition that you can achieve without having to really do a whole lot of tracking. And so I wanted to see what your opinions on that were, if you have any use cases, or like anecdotal experiences with clients that this was, hey, this worked really well for me, and this individual didn't track anything, and kind of what your thoughts are on that, and then I'll kind of give my opinion also.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've been so passionate about this topic in the last 2 weeks because I've been really frustrated with different things that I've been hearing from companies and different coaches. And in the end of the day, like, it all it's going to come down to, is this just like a marketing strategy, or is it something that's going to help the person, right? To say that you only have to belong to one camp, to one tribe, is not really serving any person, that specific person. So, like, if you are saying, we never track macros, and you're just constantly selling never track macros, well, maybe you're not really serving that person and their needs correctly, because it might be a very useful tool for them. On the other hand, if you're just like, no, we only do tracking, you only do this, well, if that is something that is very overwhelming and someone's not willing to do, they are going to get burned out. They're not going to stick to anything, right? So in the end of the day, like a lot of things in nutrition and in training, it's what is the situation, who is the person, what's the context, and what do they actually need. So if a coach is pushing for one approach only, you're really underserving all the people that you're coaching. So in my experience, I have athletes and who are wanting to be tracking and want to know more details, and it's actually helping them progress and have that accountability portion to it. And I have athletes who are like, hey, this seems really overwhelming, I don't think I want to do it, I'm seeing enough progress with what I'm doing currently. And I'm like, okay, if this is going to keep you on track for longer, that's what you need. I'm not going to push something that, one, you're not ready for, and two, you don't want to do. So you can see results with both. And this is where it starts getting a little more complicated. It's like understanding that person's goals as well, right? So tracking and the level of tracking that people choose to do is like drawing a picture. If you want to really, really see everything in basically 4K, right? Then yes, measuring and tracking everything is going to give you the clearest picture, right? And if you and who is it really for? Like, who needs that 4K type of picture? Well, if you are a performance athlete and your performance really relies on your body composition, if you are making money based off of the way you look, and if you're just really competing in a sport that is going to put you in a certain weight category, like, that's where those athletes are like, okay, like, you really have to quantify your nutrition to where it's going to work for you. And you have to know how that is going to change what you're doing. Now, for a general population, I have a lot of people who can get away just by using our feature on my app where it's just taking pictures of their food. And that's enough awareness for them to be like, oh, I've been eating very frequently and a lot of this stuff. And I was like, great, okay, let's make this switch with this and see how things are progressing then. And this is like clear enough picture for them to see progress. So in the end of the day, putting all of your eggs in one basket is not going to work for everyone. Coaches pushing only to one side of the spectrum is not going to work for everyone. Personally, I post on Instagram. It's part of us as coaches and getting out there and earning trust. But I've been incredibly frustrated seeing a lot of big companies and saying we never track or you should only track, and you're underserving the people. You're underserving the people that you are coaching. So that is my explanation on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you said about like getting really, if you're trying to paint the clearest picture you possibly can, if you have somebody that needs to be really dialed, and I think this is really common with bodybuilding as a sport, like if you're
Yeah.
trying to get stage ready, then every single calorie that you track is going to be pretty important, especially as you get closer and closer to your show, because like those little details are what's going to kind of those that margin for error has to be really small because it'll compound over days and weeks and months leading into your show, and that will make a difference in the long run. I think that like as you move further away from competition, or if you're more like performance based versus aesthetic based, then you can start to look at like for a performance based athlete, which would, I think a CrossFitter would fall into that category more so than an aesthetics based athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Like they need to be monitoring KPIs within their sport, and as long as those are improving and nutrition isn't holding them back, then that's kind of what's more important. The where I find tracking to be really useful is to for general population. I think that it's a great tool for like education. So
Yeah.
when folks come and they have no idea about like how much a certain food item costs in their caloric daily budget, just going through the process of tracking a few days here and there, or like saying like like I might be like, hey, I just need you to commit to like a week of trying to track everything
Mm-hmm.
you eat. A lot of times that's enough for them to be like, you get messages and they're like, oh my god, I can't believe I was eating like a salad and it had so many calories. Like it would have been better for me to just eat a loaf of bread. They're
Yeah.
like, it had the same, and
Yeah.
they because they've been, fed this information that like demonizing carbs or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
camp is in their
Yeah.
social media feed or what, however
Yeah. Well,
the landscape for them is, but it's like they just need to learn sort of general energy costs. Like salad dressing is one that's like huge for people. Like Gen Pop, they're like, I'm eating salad, and then they put salad dressing on there. They're like, I was eating way too much olive oil,
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
but they would have never known that unless they had tracked it,
Exactly.
right? But then once they kind of have that experience, you can almost like back off of the tracking a little bit because they have enough wherewithal then to be like, yeah, I should just try and be a little bit less liberal with my application of olive oil in the pan. Or like when I go to eat a tablespoon of peanut butter, it's a little bit smaller than what I had initially thought.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, you don't have to do it forever. You only have to do it a little bit until you gain good information, enough information, and good knowledge about what you're doing. Another example that I have is that I had a person just do 3 days of tracking, especially in the beginning when we first started. And that person came from perspective and history of where she was basically convinced that she was eating really bad and a lot, and it was just a lot of negative things. And in the end, she was like, wait, actually, I'm really proud of the way I've been eating. Like, I'm actually doing fairly well. And I was like, that's really good. Like, there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of people who will be telling you, oh, you're not doing enough of this, you're not doing enough of this. And it's like, tracking will tell you, it's like, oh, you actually are not that bad. You shouldn't be so you shouldn't criticize yourself so much. So it's both ways. It's just learning. It's all, that's all it is. And some people might need it for a little bit longer. Some people, depending on the level of competition and what they're prepping for, they might need it for a little bit longer. But again, it's not something you have to do forever. Plus, nowadays it's so much easier to do. If I would, because I mean, it would have been over 10 years ago is when I first started learning about tracking apps, and doing it was so much harder and tedious. Everything is so much more automated now. I mean, there's AI stuff, and in my experience, it's really good at estimating. Now, is it gonna be a ballpark estimation? Sure, but like all tracking is just a ballpark in the end of the day. Nothing is like super, super specific.
Right.
And
Isn't
that's
there
when
a statistic that like for food label like calorie quantities and stuff, like the FDA only requires them to be like within 20 to 15% accurate anyways. So it's and like serving sizes
yeah,
are totally like if you're gonna go eat a bag of chips and it's like eat 6 chips, like they're all different sizes, right? So it's like it's all sort of a game of averages when what it
exactly.
boils down to.
So fall into a some type of a ballpark number that you can start tracking and see how your body responds, and then you can make adjustments from there. So it's not as specific. This is another thing. It's like a lot of people then tend to also go on, towards the other side of the spectrum of like, I need this to be perfect. Even if you hit your macros perfectly, they're not going to be what it actually is. So there's
Yeah,
no
there's
perfection.
I saw a piece of research, and I'm not sure what the frequency was, but it came out around the holidays, or someone reposted it around the holidays. I think it was. Do you know who Menno Hensenens is? He's a
I don't think so.
he's a coach on. He's got a pretty good Instagram following. He's a pretty uh, reputable source of information. He posted this research article that was basically like it's won't affect you to like binge eat every once in a while. And it was around the holidays, and it was basically saying like don't worry about eating a huge meal and going crazy on Thanksgiving. You know, like it the your body will just kind of like process through it. It's like a chronic average of being like way over or way under
Yeah.
that's going to kind of drive the needle for either weight gain or weight
Yep.
loss. And that if you're relatively good at tracking, if you're good, I mean, it's kind of like the 80%, you want to be 100% 80% of the time or something like that, as opposed to like, or you want to be 80% 100% of the time, not 100% 50% of the time,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. That study that you're referencing, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's like this is what I tell people. It's like, oh, I have a 10-day vacation, like I'm gonna ruin all of my, you know, progress, and it's like, no, like over 10 days, you can't really overdo it so much to the point where you're gonna start gaining fat. Now, I bet there's gonna be some people like, oh wait, well, let me tell you, like I'm gonna do this, and it's like, okay, well, saying if you stay within pretty normal intake throughout your day, and you still have, let's say, fun foods and fun meals throughout a 10-day vacation, like you're not going to really change your body composition. You really not. Sure, like maybe a few pounds of a little more water retention, you're gonna build that much body fat in 10 days. No, that happens over time, over years. And it's just gonna be pretty easy for you to kind of get back into the saddle. Monday you're back on it and you're fine. Like it's totally fine. So
Yeah, it's like it's just the amount of like salt and alcohol and stuff usually that's going to just drive that like inflammatory response, and like your water retention goes up, and then you if you're weighing yourself every day, it freaks you out on the scale, but it's like it was just water weight. It's not really that big of a deal. Um, the one thing that I think that I wanted to mention also for like more high performance athletes is I have found personally that tracking can be really useful for helping me reference when I've had really good training sessions and
hmm
trying to align what happened that day with my nutrition and see if there's some sort of correlation there. And I'll try and reproduce that. And sometimes it works, and I'm like, okay, well, now this is a really effective pre-workout meal for me, or whatever. And then sometimes it's like, no, it was just like a one-off day where I was just having a good training session. But I think that having not necessarily like even the macros or like the body weight on those specific days, but just like knowing that this type of food or this amount of like fiber or whatever, like, hey, when I eat a lot of fruit before I go in, I have indigestion in my second session. If I'm eating more like simple carbs like rice and some like sourdough bread, my second session I tend to have a little bit less indigestion and I'm able to push a little bit harder. Those are like really useful reference points to kind of have in your back pocket as a performance athlete, unrelated to like the quantities or the
Yeah.
the raw numbers of how much you're eating.
Yeah. Well, one last thing I'm going to add to this is that I think we've been trained and really programmed to really ignore our intuition and our intuitive eating and our the way we feel after we eat too. Just because everything has been like there's so much data and you track and do this and it's like, oh, I have to have this type of food and this type of food. It's like, well, in the end of the day, like go in the gym and train hard or do a qualified workout and see how you actually felt. Like if you have the juice to go hard and lift heavy and then recover and repeat it the next day, okay, your nutrition's probably working for you. If in the end of the day you're still feeling really hungry, well, that's your body telling you that you probably did not have enough fuel. So like, don't expect tomorrow to show up underfueled and perform really well. So it's just like simple as that. And I've been there. Like I used to think I was like, no. Like I'm gonna follow this. It's okay. Like I'm hungry. I'll still perform really well. Go try and repeat an open workout and I do worse. I was like, well, dude, of course. Like you're not refueling, you're not recovering, and you're not like you just listen to your intuition more. It's thousands of years of evolution, and the body knows what it needs. So you should trust it a little bit more there.
Yeah. Yeah, big time.
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
The other thing I wanted to talk about today was what are your opinions on different sessions needing different kind of amounts or maybe macronutrient ratios depending on the training sessions that you have planned. And this doesn't have to necessarily be just like an individual training session, but let's say and I want to move away from Gen Pop a little bit here, focus more on like athletes and specifically functional fitness athletes. But if you're going through a training block where like, hey, the next 8 to 12 weeks we're going to focus on really building a lot of strength, does that person's macronutrient profile need to be adjusted at all? If they're in season, they're doing a lot of mixed work. It's mostly Metcon focused. They've spent their time doing all the base building. Now they're sort of intensifying and prepping for a competition. Does the macronutrient profile need to change for them? What are your opinions on that? And how do you go about doing that with your athletes?
Yeah, so that's it's a good thing that you also preface this with saying like, okay, this is for actually competing and for athletes who are interested in competition. Because my answer to gen population would have been like, nope, just do the same every day. Like you don't have to overthink it, right? That's simple. So now we're into like, okay, you're really interested in performance. You're really interested in extracting everything that you need um,
Yeah,
from
we're talking about like 98th
right.
plus
Yep.
percentile. You're going to quarterfinals. You are
Yeah.
maybe thinking like, I want to try and make a run for semis. I'm doing online qualifiers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with weightlifting, and if you're basically focused more on weightlifting, I would assume that is because you want to get stronger and lift more weight, right? So in the end of the day, you're gonna have to have the energy available to do that. And you have to have a little bit extra of that energy to push your basically weight to go up. That's how you get stronger. So obviously, depending on the person, depending on the situation, again, but I'll give my teenage athlete as an example. Like 2 years ago, he was like under 160, and making semifinals was just like hard because of the weights. So we're like, dude, I don't care what goes in, you just need to go and get calories. So I mean, we had, it would be 2 sessions, and it would be something like, he started bringing, he called it the magical potion. It was like this much liquid, but it had like 800 calories in it with like carbs and protein, and he would just chug that after a session. Um, in something like this, right? When it comes to weightlifting, and you want to get stronger, you need to have enough resources to build that. Now, when it comes to like the macro breakdown, I would say it's one, figuring out what you're comfortable with and what makes you feel that you are still building good strength without, adding just unnecessary body fat, right? And I would say that goes into a little bit more of like, okay, well, what's your, body type? What's your history with food? What do you digest really well? Um, and then you can make those decisions. Now, if you're talking about, you're doing 2 sessions a day, mixed modality like CrossFit training, skill conditioning, that's where obviously you are going to really increase your energy intake. And so far, I would say carbohydrates are still the, you know main source of energy, and the most effective way of athletes having good performance. So definitely carbohydrate intake goes up as your activity goes up, right? So I'm just thinking of it as like, if it's just a weightlifting session, that's still one session, right? So like the increases of a lot of things are not going to be super drastic. But if you're talking now, like you have a weightlifting session, you go back in and you have conditioning sessions. So like you're talking about like 60 to 90 minutes twice a day. That requires that much more fuel. So like usually a good rule of thumb will be about, depending again on the person, but like anywhere from 30 to 60 grams per hour of carbs for that activity, and depending on what it is too. So,
Do you think that I think that I suspect some coaches and people online will look at this and say your weightlifting. So I have two separate kind of questions here. The
yeah.
first one, when you go in to do a weightlifting session, let's say they're only doing one weightlifting session per day. They're doing like a 90 to 2 hour session. Their goal is to build strength.
Mm-hmm.
Does the macronutrient profile need to bias more towards protein than it does carbohydrates? Does it matter, or are you just making sure that you're in a caloric surplus so that you're adding muscle tissue to the frame? And then on top of that, we know that there's a limit to how much muscle mass you can put onto your frame, at least devoid of use of steroids, um, over a certain period of time, right? And so we know that if you're gaining 5 or 6 pounds, maybe like even 10 pounds per month, like a proportion of that is going to be body fat. It won't be lean muscle tissue. Is there a certain expected weight gain that you would want to see, while still trying to maintain like a relatively competitive body composition, like where we're not going like super far off the deep end, going up to like 25-30% body fat in an effort to get stronger? Because at a certain point you have diminishing returns on how many extra calories you're eating, right?
Yeah.
And so the caloric demands of the weightlifting session does tend to be relatively lower than doing an hour of mixed work, significantly more calories than an hour of weight training, although the weight training is still could be severely fatiguing, right?
Sure.
And so how do you balance that?
Yeah, to your first question about protein and carbohydrate intake, I would say when we for fats, that is again depending on the person, but I don't think there's going to be a huge difference between like just one session and weightlifting, or being it more like a CrossFit style mixed modality. When I would say for protein intake, that's where it's way different than Gen Pop. I will probably push people to like 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. So like protein needs are going to go a little bit higher, but usually those type of people don't have trouble meeting their protein goals whatsoever. Um, Carbohydrate intake, I would say overall weightlifting, and especially with weightlifters that compete, obviously you're shooting for certain body weight classes as well. So having enough energy from carbohydrates to have a very intense weightlifting session, but I don't think most would be needing like intra carbs like some of the mixed modality and functional fitness, the CrossFit athletes that might be adding extra on top of that. Um, I think there's also like nowadays there has been like such a big push for like more protein, more protein, more protein, which is like okay, at some point you're there's you're not gonna use it up. Like okay, if 1 gram per body pound of body weight is enough and you're doing just fine there, then allocate most more calories to what is going to be like giving you energy, right? And that's where your caloric intake can go up with like again depending on what you are doing. So
Yeah.
more protein all the time is not necessarily what people need.
I've seen, and I tend to agree with this, I've seen it advised that if you're performance oriented or if you're trying to gain weight, then just keeping yourself at a pound or a gram per pound for protein, or even slightly lower, and replacing those calories and filling the rest of your calories in the form of carbohydrates to drive performance is really effective. But if your goal is to be losing weight, then kind of biasing a little bit more towards the protein side of things can be helpful, because of its satiating effects and because the thermic effect of consuming protein
Yeah.
has it, even though it is in the lab at 4 calories per gram, it really shakes out closer to like 3.2 to 3.6 calories per gram because of the increased amount of like digestive stuff that needs to happen, like the peristalsis and the mastication and everything that goes
Yeah.
into processing protein tends to just be a little bit more demanding in terms of energy than things like simple carbs and sugars.
For sure, for sure. And again, it really depends on the situation. I know I keep going back to that, but it is so true. Like you have to know the athletes, you have to know their situation, and you have to check in and see how they are performing. Like if you're talking about an athlete, what really matters to them is how they perform. And performance could look different, right? Is it like your weightlifting numbers? Is it your mile time? Is it your the 30 straight handstand push-ups? I mean, whatever metric you pick, see how that your nutrition is either aiding or hindering that performance. And that's the only thing that really matters in the end of the day, because you're going to hear a lot of different opinions, you're going to hear a lot of different strategies to whatever you should be doing. I mean, um, gosh, I keep making fun of this one, but I saw it and it's like, if you're feeling bloated after a workout, just drink black pepper and turmeric. And it's like, shit like that doesn't matter, dude. Like, you
Yeah.
don't need to overcomplicate that stuff, right? So, again, protein is obviously important. I think we have, especially nowadays, we know how important it is to make sure that you're eating an adequate amount of protein. But your body is really intelligent on how it uses energy. I think a lot of people think that it's like, no, we only use carbs, we only use fats. Oh, in this time domain, I'm only using this. It's like, no, 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 no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Don't even get me started.
Think like it's
Like,
the simplest way is it's flex fuel. Like you're gonna pull from whatever you need as you need it, and it's really smart. You can't trick the system. Like the system's been there for like
you're
millions of years.
the other thing that people like, my my background education from like biology, pre-med stuff is like your if I learned anything that's really effective for like applying to nutrition, it's that your body will do whatever requires the least amount of work to
Yeah.
get energy.
Yep.
Like it will only do it'll do as little work as possible because your body's goal is like self-preservation.
Yep. That's it.
You and like it when you like exercise, you're like providing a stress to it. It doesn't know that you're like exercising for fun with your friends. It thinks that like there's a saber-toothed tiger chasing you through the snow. You know, like it doesn't know. Like you're the there's like a whole part of your brain that's like fight or flight, you know. And when you when you're like looking at nutrition, it's like it's just gonna do whatever it can to survive, and it's gonna do whatever it can to survive with the least amount of energy possible. And like that's when it's crazy to me when I see people like, oh, we're doing this, so it's glycolytic, so you're just using carbs to do this. It's like no, like there's if you're well trained, there's a lot of like fat metabolism that's happening in the background to
Yeah.
kind of support that.
Yeah.
Like, and then you're just like it's just pulling in on those carbs when it absolutely needs it, and vice versa. Like it's gonna do whatever allows it to like perform the best with the least amount of energy, and whatever route that is like not decided by you saying I'm gonna do this workout and this workout's gonna require me to use this fuel. Your body like doesn't care. It's
No.
just gonna do whatever completes the task with the least amount of energy expenditure on its end.
Yep. That's yeah, very well said. It's exactly what it is. I think it's yeah, it's like a hybrid model engine for Formula One right now.
Perfect
That's what
example.
that's what it is. If you want to be a Formula One car right now, you're 50-50 of internal combustion and electric, and you're gonna pull from it throughout the lap from different sources, and it's just gonna be like that.
Yep, exactly. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Let's go cutting and gaining strategies. We don't have to dive super deep into this because I imagine you'll have the same sort of answer that most good coaches would, and you've already kind of gone over this, but it really just depends on the individual.
Yeah.
I do want to know if you have certain frameworks or guidelines that you kind of look for in terms of tracking, like maybe body metrics or like KPIs as they
Yeah.
relate to cutting and gaining, and how you monitor those while helping the athlete manage their nutrition. And for this, again, I want to stay more on the side of like
Yeah.
a performance level athlete that is hoping to, you know, probably a quarterfinals level athlete at this point, and they are searching for that next level, maybe moving towards
Yeah.
semifinals or breaking into like elite level competition.
Yeah. So with that, choosing what sport you're gonna look at, because that's where the metrics really start being different, right? So for CrossFit athletes specifically, we're looking, and no one's gonna care about how you look. No one. What really matters is how fast you completed this workout, how heavy can you lift. So those are the metrics that I'll be looking at, and we're like, okay, well, in order for you to be, we just talked about this, in order for you to be a semifinal athlete, you need to be hitting these weights, and on these workouts, you should be getting around this time. You should be able to hold sets on gymnastics that are this big. And it's like, in order for you to be lifting these weights, well, you can't really do that at 170 pounds. It's just not going to happen. You need to get stronger. So now I've been looking at it's like, yeah, you probably are focusing on gaining weight as this is going to close the gap on your biggest weakness. Um, if you take it from the other perspective of like, okay, I can see that you're lifting, you have all the weightlifting prerequisites, but you're not really conditioned and your gymnastics are not really there. Maybe we can just only hold 2 to 3, you know, set reps per set on, let's say, bar muscle up. So it's like, well, maybe you're just too heavy for the sport at this moment, right? And I know maybe some people get upset with this, but in order for you to be a really good CrossFitter, you need to be pretty agile, you need to be quick, and you also need to be strong. So it's like, yeah, you can be really strong, but you're like pretty, what's the word, nimble and quick and agile, right?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I need you to be pretty responsive to these things and be pretty light and moving and be, I know I keep using quick, but that's exactly what it is, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, like, well, a lot of the non the stuff that doesn't require you to be big and strong requires you to move your body through space very fast.
yeah,
So, like ergs and weightlifting are going to favor somebody who's bigger. You already know this. I'm
absolutely.
just telling this to the
Yeah,
audience.
yeah.
But then anything outside of that is usually has some element of like you moving your body through space. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to say is like, to a certain extent, that's just easier when there's less mass to move around.
And yeah,
And so
depending
being
on,
lean
absolutely.
is effective.
Yeah, and obviously depending on how tall you are too, right? Because that's gonna make it make a difference. But yeah, if you are at a pretty competitive body composition for yourself, and you can still move fast, endure for a long time, and then still maintain your strength, like that's a CrossFit athlete, and that's elite CrossFit athletes, and that's what you're striving to do. Being too heavy is going to hinder your ability to sustain a lot of work for a long time, and also going to hinder your gymnastics ability. But also on the other side of the spectrum, being too light, you're not going to be able to move the heavy weights as fast as other people. So yeah, the CrossFitter is just kind of like in the middle, and that's why it's so cool, because you're a pretty much like a pretty good overall athlete that you can just kind of plug yourself into different things and do very well at. And that's the whole point. Now, when we start talking about more of like their sport being dependent on a weight category, um, like cutting and gaining becomes a little bit of a different game, because then the metric changes, right? So like my wife is really wanting to compete in weightlifting this year, so it's like, okay, well, now for you it really matters how you cut, how you gain, and does that affect your weightlifting numbers and your training blocks? Because if it's, let's say a really hard cut and you don't have good recovery, and you're not training really optimally there, well, you're gonna miss on building to the numbers that you want to get for your total. So the metrics are different for different sports, and that's what kind of dictates cutting, gaining, and how I would look at it, and what I will be looking for, a successful cut, or for a successful, gain.
Yeah. So I want to do a quick thought experiment. So we'll start with an avatar who is looking to gain weight. So this would be someone sort of like the teenager that you had mentioned
Yeah,
earlier. Let's say that they are, 170 pounds. They're very lean. They're capable of going relatively fast on the machines. They're a fast runner. They don't slow down when they're doing metcons unless there's something like a really heavy barbell that presents itself in the workout. Um, they're like 10, 12% body fat. Like everything's kind of right where it needs to be for them, except for their just overall raw strength.
hmm
When we look at prescribing like a macro prescription to them, my thought would be to kind of figure out where their like caloric maintenance is
yeah,
and increase it by like put them in a surplus of between 3 and 500 calories to start,
yeah,
probably in the form of carbohydrate, and just monitor their weight and make sure everything stays okay. I think luckily when someone is lean and you're starting from somebody being kind of basically too small and they need to get bigger, you have this weird phenomenon where there's like almost like a progressive overload of, as their body gets bigger very slowly, they probably won't be noticing huge differences in their performance on things like running or muscle ups or whatever, because you're effectively doing a progressive overload at
yeah,
a very, very, very slow rate.
yeah,
Would you say that that's about how you would approach going
yeah,
about a weight gain? You're just trying to make sure that they're not gaining too much weight too fast, because
yeah,
like we said earlier, there's a certain amount of lean body mass that you can add, and anything on top of that tends to be
Yeah.
in the form of like visceral fat, and that isn't really that visceral fat isn't going to necessarily increase your performance in any way as it relates to sport. And so in that instance, it would be uh, in a way detrimental to like have to pack all of that extra weight on and then have to go back and lose it later.
Yeah. Um, yes, and that would change with also like the layers of like elite level. Like the closer you are to the top, the margin for like little tweaks becomes even smaller, right? They have to be really, really dialed in, right? The further down you go from the top, there's a little bit more room of like, well, you don't have to be like really perfect with how you do it, just do it almost, right? If I'm thinking for like the extreme example, like, okay, well, this person is really, really lean, they're probably already struggling to consume that amount of calories. So at that point, it's like, yeah, you're right. Like 300 to 500 calories would be like a really good ballpark. And I'll be like, you know what, dude? Like, just go get those calories from whatever you like. Just fill them up. Like, fill up those calories. If that's a PB&J and a chocolate milk, awesome. Like, great. Then just go for it. I don't care. Because that's, your your care is about how you perform. The closer to the top you get, I think the tweaks that you make are going to be way more like detailed, and that's where you have to really monitor like the person every week, and obviously they will be paying way more attention to what they're doing as well. So, but yeah, that's about it. That's
For and let's go over an avatar that is a little bit like bigger than what they should be for the performance side of things. So if they're wanting to be an elite level functional fitness athlete, then we know that for men, you got to be like 15 to 10% body fat probably. It's
mm-hmm.
There are outliers, of course, but in general that's kind of what
For sure.
the competitions are selecting for. And then for women, I think it's a little bit higher. It's probably 18 to 15, and it'll go down further. Like there are plenty of women who are extremely lean, but I would say on average you can be a little bit higher on the women's side for the percent body fat. For them, if they're rocking like 25% body fat, let's say I'm 25% body fat, I'm a guy, I'm snatching 275, 285, things are feeling good, but I've got pretty crummy strict handstand push-ups. I struggle to hold like a 9-minute mile when I run. Burpee box jump overs feel really sluggish. I just need to like get lean. In that instance, what I would do is say, hey, let's look at losing about half a pound to about a pound of body weight per week. We're going to do that by cutting your calories back between 250 to even up to 500, depending on their existing daily caloric intake. Now, if their daily caloric intake is 4,000 calories a day, and that's what's sustaining them, then I think that they could probably, depending on their training load, effectively drop down closer to that 500 deficit range. But if it's, if they're already at 3,000 calories, you might not want that percentage to be as large. Anyways,
Yeah.
you kind of cut them back a little bit. You monitor KPIs. How much of a weight loss in terms of load lifted during training sessions would you expect, if any? And how much of a trade-off do you think is important there? And we'll say for this specific avatar that I've described, because I know it depends, right? Like, because you might have somebody who's incredibly strong and very overweight, and then for them it's like the trade-off is very obvious.
Yeah.
Get leaner, give up 30 pounds on your 360 pound snatch, and you'll still be totally fine.
Yeah.
But you'll also be able to do this other stuff. Let's say someone who's like kind of right on the bubble, maybe a little bit more strength biased. Like, how would you go about that?
Yeah. So first, I don't think you lose much strength. I really don't. I think most of it you will keep if you've built the strength and you have the base, it's so much easier to maintain. Even through like having time off from weightlifting injuries, If you have the base, it's so much easier to maintain, even through a cut. When that avatar that you're describing, like let's say like quarterfinal, maybe like a bubble semifinal athlete that they're looking to, okay, let's just get into a little bit better composition, body weight composition. Like that's where, a little bit of tracking, a little bit of like knowing what you're doing and finding that maintenance calories, like even hovering more consistently around your maintenance calories and cutting out a little bit of the bullshit that you've added to your diet, and just looking at yourself more as an athlete, right? They'll probably get you some good results. And then, yeah, the cut does not have to be really anything that drastic for you to start seeing the speed come to you in workouts, and the gymnastics get a little bit better as you continue to
Another
train.
another one that I've done, or an approach I've taken as an athlete, that I did with Paul actually, was to effectively keep calories the same. There was like a very slight reduction in strength training in my program, and an increase in like mixed work and kind of like some lower intensity work. So the caloric like expenditure of my workouts and daily caloric expenditure was just going up. And so instead of reducing the amount of calories that I was consuming, we were just increasing the amount of calories that I was burning.
Yep.
And I found that to be very effective, and it's a lot more comfortable effectively. Like I felt better and to an extent, when you start to do that, your metabolism starts to shift, and you might even be losing weight and adding calories.
Yep.
As training volume continues to increase. And so there are effective strategies out there. I'm glad you mentioned that, where you don't have to touch nutrition.
Yeah.
Like you said, if there's some crap in the diet and you're like, we got to clean this up.
Yeah.
Like you just need to be a little bit more optimized with your food selection. Then yeah, of course, like you'll just feel better in your training. But like you can pull a different lever in the form of activity instead of food restriction. Or increase or whatever.
And this is something that I think people tend to really overcomplicate with nutrition. Now, obviously, don't think that you can out-train a bad diet. Like, you can't. If you're adding freaking ice cream and alcohol every week, like, dude, you can't help yourself. If you have a good enough nutrition where it really supports your activity, your lifestyle, and most of your food comes from whole foods, like, you can't really get outside of, like, the maintenance calories. Like, you'll be okay, right? Even if you're staying at maintenance. And I would say what is really undervalued is go on a freaking walk. Go on extra walks. Move more. Just move more. 40 minutes of walking, it's gonna not only help digestion, you're just gonna be adding more movement. It doesn't have to be anything super crazy. I think people tend to go to like, I need to do all this. And it's like, no, like start with that. And in your case, it was like, oh, I just added a little bit of extra like monostructural stuff and movement, which made it so much more manageable for me. So it's like, at the end of the day, the nutrition aspect of it doesn't have to be super drastic. It has to be good enough. And then you can also make adjustments with your activity level. I would say, like, I know of so many athletes who, sure, you train really hard during your sessions, but you're so inactive for the rest of the day. It's like, go walk. You don't have to do just a workout. Movement is not just working out. So adding more movement, that helps a ton with body composition, and in a very easy way.
Dude, some of the leanest people at my gym are construction workers, because they're just
nonstop
moving and basically doing low intensity cardio and like kind of like very light weightlifting all day long. And then they come in and they work out and they kind of eat whatever they want, but their caloric expenditure is so high that they are able to keep themselves super lean. But it's so true. It's like you can, and the other thing is like athletes like to train. And so, even if like I do feel like sometimes if you're like, hey, I want you to go out and walk, they're like, but if you like just dose them in their program design with like some low intensity thing that is like, hey, you're going to do this training piece. And it's like, do some of this and get on the bike, and it's like same caloric expenditure as going on a walk, but for whatever reason, if they like get to go into the gym, they like doing it, you know. And then but then it's like they I think that athletes would almost prefer to like go and train again than have like the added stress of like starting to like feel hungry and dial like nutrition in super fine tuned or fine tooth comb through their nutrition strategy. It's like just just go in and train again. Like really light, like obviously manage your load and everything.
Right.
But like they're athletes. They want to like work out. They don't want to like.
That's true.
And there is, I think you hit the nail on the head. People like I'm guilty of it. I'm like I trained really hard today. I'm gonna go home and lay down.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like I don't want to go for a walk. I just worked out.
Yeah.
You know.
But even if it's like, I mean, obviously, like creating a habit, right? And a habit of like either like in the morning if you have time or at night after dinner. Those like 30-40 minute walks can add so much value, just for any athlete, to be honest. And I was just thinking about this, like, yeah, I'm gonna start putting in, all right, session 3, put a dumbbell in your backpack, go for a walk. This is your workout.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a rock.
Yeah, make it a workout. That's funny though.
Okay. Last one. I have rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Favorite pre, intra, and post workout meals? What are your favorite personally?
Easy. I've been doing right now one of these Nature Bakery fig bars and a banana, which gets me exactly what I need. And I do either like instant coffee with honey, or I buy this like strong coffee mix and mix it with like a little bit chocolate milk. Amazing pre-workout. Oh, and beta alanine in it as well. Post-workout, right now, rice cakes, peanut butter, and like a Fairlife chocolate milk or like a Greek yogurt. Super easy. Yeah.
Mine pre-workout is I train in the morning, so about 2 hours before I train. It's like a bowl of oatmeal with some fruit in it, a little bit of honey. Intra, I'll have like usually like a rice cake or two while I'm training, depending on what the training piece is. And then post-workout, usually I have like a banana, some whey protein.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about intra. I use the Kirkland veggie fruit pouches.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy.
I like those.
So, and cheap.
Okay. Nutrition coach green flag. So we've already touched on a lot of red flags throughout the episode, talking about like you gotta be in this camp of doing it this way or this camp of doing it that way. Yeah. What are like 2 or 3 green flags where you see a nutrition coach online, you hear him talking about stuff, and you're like, that's good. I like that. I'm gonna give this person a follow. I'm gonna repost their stuff.
They ask a lot of questions. I will look for someone who's asking a lot of questions when they work with people. 2, they're not marketing only one way. Like, they're not married to one way of approaching nutrition, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. That's one that I really like. And then and I will look for coaches who simplify things and create hope rather than fearmonger and, again, create tribalism around certain topics and opinions. So
I think that's such an applicable thing across all kind of forms of fitness, whether it's nutrition or exercise. I think that in general, the industry, and I think it's trending this way. I think the pendulum is starting to swing this way, but just being more positive, like, and not looking at something and saying, well, they don't do it the way I would do it, and therefore it's bad and I'll demonize them. Mm-hmm. It's like that person's doing something that's better than doing nothing, right? And like they're doing exercise, and that's great. And if it's Orange Theory or yoga or whatever, it's better than not doing anything. If this person wants to do their nutrition this one way, it's like, hey, at least they're thinking about their nutrition.
Yeah.
And, you know, like that's certainly a step above just consuming egregious amounts of food because you're like ignorant to the fact that nutrition could be a useful tool for your health and longevity.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that last thing is really important, what you just said.
Yeah.
What are the three biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to lose weight? Someone comes to you, they're like, I'm trying to lose weight. This is what I've been doing. What are the three big mistakes that you see where you're like, boom, boom, boom. Those are three things that we can fix right now.
Yeah.
I see everyone do this.
Yeah. First one, the all in or all out approach. It never works. So basically, what I would say is people will fall off the horse and then they will keep taking their horse back to the starting line. Just get back on the horse and then just keep moving. You don't have to restart every single time. Um, picking picking diets. You picking diets because the previous one never worked. So you're gonna keep picking different diets because they never work. Um, Number three would be unwillingness to and have an unwillingness, but also not having the courage to try a different thing. Some people, and I've started being more careful with this and to like interview the people that I work with, come with such preset beliefs that they basically come to me to ask me that their beliefs are right. And my job as a coach is to give you different perspectives. And maybe that is going to also change the way you think about yourself and change your identity around food, which is needed if you are going to make any sustainable habit changes. So, like, if people are only looking for me to validate their opinions, that's a big mistake if you're trying to improve your nutrition. That was a bit longer one.
No, but that one's important. Okay. What are three things you wish everybody knew about nutrition? Like three things that you wish that when, and maybe like they're like simpler facts, but like what are three things when someone comes to you, you're like, I wish that everyone just knew this and was educated on this before they even reached out to me.
Yeah. I would say number one.
That makes it sound like you're like, I'm not saying that you're not gonna like be friendly to somebody who doesn't know this stuff, but like, what are things that you're like, this should just be common knowledge?
I wish people knew that the basics are still very effective and are probably way more effective than anything else that people choose to do when it comes to nutrition. Number two, I wish people knew that carbohydrates coming from natural foods are not bad for you. Fruit does not have too much sugar, and the fact that you are avoiding fruit and other carbohydrates, but you're opting out to eat keto cookies and processed food, that makes it better. You're just lying to yourself. And number three, let me think about this one. I wish people knew that you don't have to look like, like the cover of a fitness magazine to be healthy. You can be a very healthy person. You can do everything that you want to do. You can be a very high performing athlete without having to achieve a 10% body fat. At that point, you're not gaining any more health benefits. You're maybe gaining performance benefit, but that's about it. So, if anything, find a balanced approach that works for you and works for a long time. And once you get to a good range of body fat to lean muscle mass ratio, that you don't have to achieve this type of look unless you really want to. But that's where the health benefit really, it's like, yep, you got it.
Isn't there something out there, you might know if there's like a specific research article or source for this, but I think like the average set point across like men was between 20 and 15% body fat. Like if you're within that range, like that's a very optimal and healthy range to be in.
Yeah.
Like going lower than that, like you said, is could be very beneficial for performance in some instances, but it's not necessarily like optimized for like overall health and longevity. And I'm sure for women, I think it's a little bit higher. It
It
might
is
be
a bit
like
higher, yeah.
22 to 18 or something like that,
Yeah.
just because of anatomy. But like, I think that's a really important thing to consider also is like, we talked a lot today about like getting lean because there's like performance benefits to it for the specific use case of like a CrossFit athlete or a functional fitness athlete, which
Yeah.
is a lot of the people that you and I both work with. But like for general population, which you and I both work with plenty of general population folks as well, it's like once you get to that 20 to 15% body fat, it's like there's no reason, unless, like you said, you want to get leaner because you've got some aesthetic goal or something.
Yeah.
There's no like biomarker evidence that like going from 17% body fat to like 13% body fat is going to have a huge effect on your like overall health and longevity. You're just going to look different. You're not really going to like be able to be more resistant to like disease or like other
Exactly.
like mortality markers later in life.
Yeah. And one last thing, it's like it's all trade-offs. Like, are you willing to sacrifice
Totally.
something to achieve that? Because in the end of the day, it doesn't just kind of happen all at the same time. It's a trade-off. So, what are you willing to, be that trade-off for yourself?
Okay, Peter, where can people find you? Let's go. You have Instagram and then website. I'll put it up on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
screen.
Trident Athletics HQ is my Instagram. And if you type in tridentathleticsflagship.com, that's my website. You can see all the information. But really active on Instagram, so you can just find me there.
Great. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Sweet,
so
man.
thanks guys for watching, and we'll be back. The next episode is going to be about ring muscle ups. That'll be me by myself. We'll talk about
Sweet.
ring muscle ups. Thanks for coming on, Peter.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude. That was awesome.